This is Jamie Dyer welcoming you to another edition of the Quo-Cast. Can you believe that it has been 25 years since the release of the Status Quo single Little White Lies? Time sure does fly, doesn't it? Let me tell you a few facts about the song. It was released in June of 1999. It was taken from the album Under the Influence, which was released around March of that year. The song was released, and unfortunately, it's still just outside of the top 50. It was around 53 in the UK singles charts. As far as I can tell, it's only been performed on TV once. The track was written by Rick Parfitt, solely credited. The chart position of the track was probably helped by the fact that it was a 2 CD single. The days when you had CD 1 and CD 2, and each one had different tracks on it. From my research, a video was actually filmed in a pub, but never released. Maybe one day it will see the light of day if it was indeed finished. I would certainly like to see that. I personally believe that this is something of a modern Quo classic. Now, let me explain what I mean by modern. I see a lot in the Quo community of people separating, say, pre-86 and post-86. And I would say that post-86 is like the modern incarnation of the band, I think you could say. And when taking into account like the last 30 years, let's say, so back to Thirsty Work onwards, I do believe that this is somewhat an underrated track, because it isn't your typical Quo stuff, is it? It's not a boogie, but there are things in there that I think tell you this is Status Quo, and I will get to that in a moment. This is quite a personal, the lyrics seem quite personal and very poignant in some ways. It's talking about a relationship and little white lies and such. And it's one of the few tracks, along with Living on an Island and I think even some stuff from the Pile Driver era, that has an acoustic guitar in it. And that gives it a different vibe. I believe it's Rick playing the lead on here too, which is an interesting change. But the thing that makes it Quo for me is that you've still got that kind of like thumping chug thing going on in the verses from that, from the bass and the rhythm guitar there, just kind of, chopping away, which is really cool. Also, the harmonies in the chorus. I mean, you got Francis singing the verses. Doesn't sound like it's double tracked. I think it's only a single vocal there. And then you've got the harmonies, which is like maybe at least 4 vocals in there. Rick is one of them. I think Andy's another. Rhino's probably in there too, if the TV performance is to be taken seriously. And those harmonies just lift that chorus, I think, because you've got sort of the a little bit like Tongue-Tied, I guess, from a lot later. You've got that almost like frailty yet strong vocal in the verse, and then it's lifted by the harmonies in the chorus. Another very Quo thing as well is that in that middle 8 section, you've got Rick singing the lead there, which is something they used to do, way back in like the early 80s with like Old Rag Blues and Something About You Baby I Like, where he'd come in and he'd sing an extra line or a middle 8 or whatever. So that's a really old school Quo thing there. I do like the solo on this as well. I think it's a really strong solo, and it's just a nice song, I think, and it was very radio friendly. I think maybe they released it 5, maybe 10 years too late But as it is, Mike Paxman's production is very of that moment. Like it does work, I think. It's just unfortunate. Maybe if it had been the first single from the album, it might have fared better. But, unfortunately, not too much of a success, that. But one thing I did notice, maybe it does have its fans out there, despite its poor chart performance and the fact it kind of gets forgotten in the whole story of Quo. This single gets forgotten because it kind of, I guess it must have felt like just a promotional tool for the album. But I was browsing around Amazon Music yesterday, and I clicked on Status Quo to research something else, and it said top songs, and the top song was, I think it was either Down Down or Rockin' All Over the World. And then the second one was Little White Lies, which was really surprising. I was like, why is that number 2 in the top listened to songs on Amazon Music? And I looked up, and I think it's because there is a One Direction song called Little White Lies, which I'm sure is, it wasn't a single or anything, it was just on one of their albums. But it's, they're a popular band, searched a lot, and I wonder sometimes whether Quo's song, Little White Lies, they're not related, comes up as a suggested for some reason, so people click on it, maybe thinking that, One Direction's a cover or something. That's just me surmising, though. That's not anything particularly, there's no actual foundation for that theory. That's just my idea. What do you think of the song Little White Lies? Do you think it's a modern Quo classic, or just an example of Quo going a little bit more on the lighter side of things? I like it when they go a little bit lighter, as evidenced with Living on an Island and a few of the ballads that they did in the Pile Driver era. Do let me know what you think of the track. And if you ever want to get in contact with the podcast, email quocast@outlook.com. That's quocast@outlook.com. You can tweet at the Quocast on Twitter, or check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/The Quocast. Go and check out the website, www.thequocast.co.uk, and I will see you again for another episode of The Quocast. Bye-bye for now.